What's up, guys? Welcome to the Floyd Street's Finest podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Greer. We are part of the Field of 68 Media Network, and if you're curious what that is, go check us out on the fieldof68.com. We've got so much going on in our media network, podcasts galore across college basketball. We've got Jeff Goodman and Rob Doster, Robbie Hummel, Tim Miles running national podcasts. We've got a brand new women's college basketball podcast focusing on the game from a national perspective. And we've got a bunch of great team podcasts. So for Louisville fans, if you want to listen to Kentucky or Indiana podcasts or just follow the other local teams, they've also got some ACC team podcasts as well that you'd be interested in, especially once the conference season starts. But before we get to today's episode, the latest interview that I have recorded with Christen Cunningham, who is a graduate assistant now at Louisville, beginning his coaching career after a strong college career and spent part of last season in Croatia. We actually missed each other just by a couple of weeks for Christen dealing with some injuries and everything, but he is making the transition to a coaching career. He had a bunch of thoughts on this year's Louisville team and how it's adjusting to Chris Mack's system and what that process is like as someone who came in as a graduate transfer and had to learn it pretty quickly. That podcast interview, I should say, was recorded before the season started, so he's got more general thoughts on things. Before we get to that, though, I want to update folks. Louisville 3-0 now on the regular season with wins over Evansville and Prairie View A&M running away, and then a close win, a good win over Seton Hall, the type of win that you look at their schedule and their resume in February and March, and they'll be glad that they won that game. Louisville has done a lot of things well so far. There are some concerning areas. I think obviously injuries would be first and foremost. So I want to give you a couple of brief, quick thoughts on what I've seen so far from Louisville. Before I do that, I got to tell you, I say this every podcast, I'm never going to stop. Rate and review Floyd Street's Finest, wherever you get your podcasts, on whatever podcasting platform. Give us a rating, give us a review. Someone was so kind as to say that I love dogs and basketball, which are both factual statements. Another person also said that they found me to be very pretty. Another factual statement. So just make sure that you're spreading the word and leaving us ratings and reviews on all of our podcasts in the Field of 68 Network. That is the best way that we can reach other people and get this thing really, truly spread to all of our fans who deserve a chance to keep listening to more and more and more college basketball content. With that being said, a couple quick thoughts. I have 6 numerical points here that I want to make. Number one, I think Louisville has a really good chance to be a strong offensive team. And I think it was Sam Vecini who pointed this out on Twitter during the Seton Hall game. It really does seem like their go-to down the stretch when they need buckets and they need efficient possessions is going to be the pick and roll through Carlik Jones and David Johnson. Seems like a really smart plan. Carlik Jones is as advertised. The guy's really crafty getting into small spaces. He can use his geometric skills to finish off the glass. I saw that in practices before the season started. That has translated to games. He's shooting it well from outside. Those are all good things that translate. But the biggest thing is he draws defenders and can find people. And that's something that's really important for him. I think David Johnson has a chance to have a really great season. Shocking to say that about a potential first-round draft pick. But he still has to figure out his foul trouble. I don't know if it's foot speed. I'd be interested to hear some other people's thoughts on some people who scout teams and know what might be going right and going wrong for individual players. I'd be interested to hear what they think. He's got the length. He's got that build that makes him so difficult to break down if you're a smaller guard. And I just wonder if the smaller guards see that in the scouting report and know that if they get up into him, they can draw fouls because he's not as quick as they are. I could be wrong on that. But that's something to monitor this season because when he's on the floor, Louisville just is a totally different team. He's such a good passer. You saw it. I know it's Prairie View A&M. They are the returning SWAC champions, so give them some credit. That was not Evansville. But that being said, he was out of foul trouble. He was doing a lot of things, blocking shots, getting deflections and steals, finishing around the basket. Still has to get that jump shot better. I know Fran Fraschilla was talking about that during the Seton Hall game, and that's true. In order for him to take the next step as a draft prospect, he's got to be able to make his jump shot consistently and boost those percentages. Those two guys seem to be the key to that offensive efficiency. And I also really like what Jalen Withers has been able to do finishing around the basket. So once they get some of these other guys back, expect that offense to be continue to be pretty efficient. Now, of course, they're about to run into some real challenges on the schedule. Western Kentucky, obviously built around Charles Bassey, really tough inside. It's going to be an interesting contest for Louisville. UNC Greensboro is going to press the crap out of them. Isaiah Miller, in my opinion, is possibly the best defensive player in the country, and he's definitely in the conversation. The guy is an absolute maniac in the full court press. He is going to be a thorn in their side. And UNC Greensboro will play very similar to Prairie View A&M. They're going to press all game. They're going to try to get in the passing lanes, get deflections, and be annoying. And just remember, when teams are pressing, that doesn't necessarily always, if it's successful, that doesn't always necessarily just mean they're getting deflections and steals. They also want to bother you, force you to start your offense later and switch into your late clock offense more often than you'd like to. And if they're able to do that, if they're able to bother Louisville for the whole game, that affects you in a variety of ways. It makes it harder for your team to defensive rebound because your guys are tired. It makes it a lot more difficult to get good looks offensively. So those are two really interesting challenges for Louisville just this coming week. And then you talk, of course, about Wisconsin, the game that'll have about 30 possessions over the course of 40 minutes probably, and Kentucky with all of its length and athleticism. Those are all really interesting challenges for what, again, I think could be a pretty efficient Louisville offense. Defensively, I like the length. I'm a little concerned about the defensive rebounding. Seton Hall got a third of the available offensive rebounds to them. What helped Louisville a lot, though, Seton Hall just 9 of 21 on layups and dunks, something that I think shows, I know that they probably missed a couple of bunnies in there, some gimmies, but it also shows that Louisville has the length and the athleticism to bother people inside and around the basket defensively. That's huge for Louisville, especially as long as Malik Williams is out. He was going to be such a key factor for Louisville in the interior this season. When he does come back, that gives them that added rim protection. And a bunch of the other guys who are injured right now give them perimeter length. So it's set up to be a defensive team the way Chris Mack wants them to be. All of those are pretty good things right now, but again, some real tests coming up. So it's kind of still in a wait-and-see mode for Louisville. Last thought. Man, some of the newcomers are really nice additions for Louisville. I wasn't sure what type of roles J.J. Traynor and Dre Davis would have. If Louisville was fully healthy, I think it's fair to assume that especially Traynor might not see as much time just because Malik Williams you would think would play a lot, and then Jalen Withers would slide into his role when Williams was out and play the 4 when Williams is in. But Trainor's taken advantage of his opportunities. He's really good on the offensive glass. He can use that length early in his development to still be productive. He's shown he can finish around the rim. And then Dre Davis, man, you hear coaches talk about how every team needs an MFer on their team, and Dre Davis is a tough MFer, dude. He gets after it. That's what you want on your team as an inside-outside guy, similar to a Keelan Martin or Dwayne Sutton. He can shoot it a little bit. He gets into the lane. He's a good offensive rebounder, tough defender, does not care if he is among the trees. Think he can be a really nice player for Louisville, not just this season. But the benefit, if you can find some silver linings in all of these injuries to Charles Midland, Sam Williamson, Josh Nickelberry, is you're getting to see a guy like Dre Davis really shine early on in the season. Last two guys I want to talk about, Jalen Withers. I picked him in my ACC basketball fantasy league that I'm in because I thought he was going to get a lot of opportunities, and such is the case. He had a great game against Prairie View A&M, a smaller team, so obviously things will be more difficult against bigger teams, but I thought he showed for himself pretty well against Seton Hall. So he's a player that has to be efficient for Louisville and keep showing his array of offensive and defensive talents that he's got. He can step out and shoot a little bit. He can dribble, although they really probably want him primarily as a roll man on duck-ins, finishing around the basket offensively, and he's shown he can do that. And then Quinn Slazinski, he can shoot a lot better than he is. 2 of 11, I think, is his number right now from three-point range. That's got to improve, and it can improve. He's a good shooter, but he has shown that he can be a guy who does similar to Dre Davis. He doesn't have that same physicality and toughness as Dre Davis, but he's close. I mean, in terms of toughness, in terms of attitude, he's physical. He gets after it, and he does a lot of little things for Louisville. He's a good passer in tight spaces, something that really helps when you can see over defenses the way he can. So it's an interesting mix of players for Louisville. I wasn't quite sure what to make of them coming into the season with the injuries, but I think they're off to as good of a start as they could ask for. And now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of this non-conference schedule before league play starts, and you're really going to learn a lot about Louisville very quickly coming up. All that being said, I've got Christen Cunningham here on the other side, a long interview with him. It should be fun. Hopefully you enjoy it. And again, tell your friends, rate and review this bad boy. And most of all, I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving and a happy holiday season as this thing really kicks up. It's officially Christmas season for all you people who start listening to Christmas music in like August. Okay, now it's actually Christmas season and we can all enjoy it. So enjoy this Christen Cunningham interview, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Okay, we are joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Christen Cunningham, CC, as everyone affectionately knows him here in Louisville. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good. How are you?
Hanging in there. Can't complain. It's basketball season again. It's the
Finally.
best time of year. I know, man. It's been a
Man.
long time coming.
Yeah.
But as we were saying before we hit record on here, I saw you, I guess 2 weeks ago now, walking around practice. It was kind of a familiar sight after last year, both of us taking a step away, but you're now in the program assistant, grad assistant role for Louisville. How did that come about, and how's it going so far?
So, funny story. I always had people tell me like, oh, you should coach, and never really thought too deeply into it, like, oh, that would be a nice profession. But I was so locked into playing. When you're an athlete, you're just thinking about trying to, make it to the pinnacle of your career, get to be the best version of yourself. But, I think it was about my year at Louisville, actually. I keep talking to Mr. Bob Valvano after the game. He keeps telling me, man, CC, you just look like you meant to coach. You look like you're born to coach, man. You look like you're a natural coach out there. So I start thinking about it and start thinking about it in my year overseas. And then actually, we were mid-pandemic and Coach Mack called me and he said, if you're sure that you're done playing, I'd love to have you, on the staff. And from there, it was a tough decision. I kind of juggled back and forth with it for a couple of weeks. He told me to take my time, take about a month to make sure I was sure, because that's the hardest decision, for athletes, is deciding when it's over. But after thinking about it, the virus hitting and everything, it was going to be tough, being back overseas. And this was a great time to transition into, my second career, so to speak.
They're sticking around the game. That's always something that I think, if you're like, there are some guys and gals, it's okay. Like if they just are like, I've played, whatever sport it is for 20 years, or like in your case, like you said, since you were 5 or 6 years old, like you've been around a game for a long time. I want to go do business or something else. That's fine. But there are also a lot of people who you're going to be competitive the rest of your life in that sport and you want to stay around it. Does it still give you that like feel when you're at practice and stuff? Like the juices are still flowing?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the perks of my job is I actually am permitted to play with the guys, from time to time in practice. So that keeps me young. I got to make sure I keep myself tight. But yeah, that is obviously, like you said, man, just staying connected to the sport. That was something that was big for me. It wasn't early on, but once I was kind of stepping away from it, realized I was going to retire, man, it just, the opportunity to get to coach basketball for a living, this is something that I've done for fun. This is my passion. I truly love the game. I've invested my whole life into it. So to get an opportunity to do this, as a profession, and take it for granted today, that's a blessing.
I would think as a point guard in this program, a guy who went through the paces of learning the MAC system, and I know you spent a lot of time with Dino Gaudio going over stuff, and you obviously made it a point to learn everything that you could from them in the year that you had. Does it feel like you got to be careful not to like overwhelmingly unload the notebook of all the different things that you've learned with guys like David Johnson and Carlik Jones and those guys?
Man, absolutely. So, as a player, I tried to be this way, but like you said, as a coach, there's so many different people around me, so many people that I look up to, like Coach Mack, the whole staff, Gaudio, Murray, Pegues, and then from our players as well. I learned just as much from interacting with them and talking with them, about what they see and what's going on with them. But, I'm just trying to be a sponge. Like you said, I got a running journal. I write in it every day, just making notes of, how I see Coach Mack, kind of managing the preseason and, his timeline of when he's doing things, when he's putting in this and, how he's reacting to these days. And the same, I watch Murray do a workout or, listen to Gaudio talk about a scout. I'm trying to record it all and just make sure that I'm retaining as much information as possible.
Is it what is the biggest difference, I guess? I'm sure there's 1,000 of them, but like when you go for, it's kind of like breaking the fourth wall. Like you go from being a player to being in the coach's room. What do you think the biggest differences are from that experience to being a coach?
Yeah, so as a player, a lot of it is trying to understand what someone is telling you and how to do that on the court. As a coach, instantly, when I got here, I realized it's a lot more difficult trying to make someone understand what I'm saying and how to make them get it and translate that into the court. Because everyone's different. Everyone receives, knowledge differently. So some guys, it's more talking to them. Some guys, it's more, showing them stuff on video. Some guys, it may be drawing it up on the board. Some guys, it's actually getting out there doing it with them, trying to simulate as much with the game. But I guess I didn't realize that as much as a player because, I always felt like I was pretty smart. I was able to pick up concepts. Mm-hmm. If somebody wasn't guarding somebody correctly, if Jordan was not guarding someone in practice, I'd just say, switch, I got him. Let me go do it. Mm-hmm. So I guess a whole different element is like, no, how can you get this player to do it? How can you motivate him? How can you get him to understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Just being able to, go do it like I did as a player.
Yeah, that's big. I don't think people realize like how much goes into that. Like I remember a few years ago, I think it was around when Lamar Jackson arrived at the football program, and they were talking about how they'd send the players, the incoming recruits, to a psychiatrist, psychologist type person who could help them define how that incoming player learns, so that then the coaches could then take that information and use it to be helpful in their coaching situations. But it does matter. Like if you tell me something, I'm not going to retain it. I need to see it in writing, or I need to see someone do it, and then I can mimic that and kind of memorize it. But it is fascinating, like how different everybody learns.
Everybody, and I tell you, no two players are the same. You can say something to one player, and he can go out there, and like you said, he can hear it, and he can go out there and he can do it, almost verbatim. But you may tell that same thing to someone, and they, maybe don't process it the same way. Everybody's got a different learning style. And as coaches, that's our job to try to cater to those. It's not their job to try to give, how we teach. And you got to, try to personalize it to the player.
Now, have you mastered your pick and roll explanation with the fork and knife like Dino and Mac did for you on your recruiting business?
Not yet, not quite yet. They got a lot of years on me, and they got a lot of stories. But well, that'll come with experience.
I told Carlik the other day that he's got to get with you about your water expertise, because he's got to catch up. He's getting up there in the college basketball years. He's got to make that full on transition of being a water connoisseur like you.
Yeah, and that was something I didn't pick up until later.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that'll come with it. But I spend a lot of time with Carly. Great kid. He loves to work. We talk a lot. We work out a lot. So he's been great.
Well, I'm going to ask you a little bit about the team here in a second. I did want to tell you one other thing that you'll appreciate. I had Mac on 3 episodes ago, and we were talking about our time, his time in Europe and my time traveling over there, and you'll relate to this. He was in Slovenia, and I think he was only there for a few months because he got hurt. He's the last guy walking off the court at halftime. He's talking to his coach, and he gets into the locker room. And as he's approaching the locker room, there's smoke coming out of the bottom of the door in the locker room, and he opens it to find that all of his teammates are smoking. And he's like, okay, I'll just get a water and see if I can deal with this. He grabs a water, and it's a warm carbonated water. And I was just thinking about you when he said that. I'm like, man, that would have been an adjustment if Croatia didn't have the right type of water for Cece while he's playing over there. That was going to be a real challenge.
Man, it took a minute. It took a minute to find, one that I really, really like. So they actually do have Evian, which is probably my
good
brand of water, but it's really expensive. But like the fountain water over there, the water from the faucet, if it rains, you can't drink it. Yeah. So maybe every couple of weeks, it may rain or storm, and we'd have a guy out for 2 days because they drank the water and got sick. But like you said, man, the carbonated water, that's so big over there. They love it. I mean, like we would go to lunch, so we would have practice in the mornings, 10 to 12. And then we would go to lunch, and then we'd come back and practice maybe like 4 to 6:30. We would go to lunch, and these guys, these European vets, they'd be ordering a bottle of wine and get a carbonated water and mixing it. I'm like, these guys are insane.
Yeah, totally different lifestyle over there. That is for sure.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I think something that everybody will be curious about, or especially as a guy who's so recently removed from playing in the Louisville system under Chris Mack, what have you noticed about this group in practices, and what's kind of stood out to you both in terms of what you're impressed with, but also maybe some areas that still need some work as the season approaches?
Yeah, well, I guess what stuck out to me, in my first season as a coach is the bad luck aspect of it. I mean, we've dealt with injuries, and obviously the coronavirus is shaking things up. But, this team's got a ton of talent. They got a ton of length. I'm out there playing against them the other day, and I'm looking at it, and it's like, David's on the ball. He's 6'5". You got Sam on one wing, 6'7". You got Jalen Withers down there who's 6'9". You got Trainer out there who's 6'10".
Mm-hmm.
So much length. Josh Nickelberry's long arms. DeAndre Davis the same. So we've got a ton of length. I think in time we can be a great defensive team. I think we can be a great rebounding team. And, a different group than what we had last year. We don't quite have the offensive firepower as some of those guys, Jordan and Ryan and, Dwayne, but it's going to be a very confrontational group. I think they'll be extremely competitive, and hopefully we'll have to put it together as the season goes on, trying to navigate the virus, and, hopefully we don't lose any guys or have to shut down. But, it's going to be interesting to see the development of this group, because it'll be a different team, different style of playing team.
So as a guy who has always been talked about as a smaller guard, blah, 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 which is hilarious coming from me. I know you've stood next to me. I'm a small guard by high school standards. But in the MAC system, speak to that, the value of the length that, and I know he's gone out and recruited guys who can be those longer wings and guards in that hybrid pack line. What value does that have as a player when you can really be able to, it gives you that extra little reach. It makes it a little bit harder for people to beat you off the dribble, all of those things. How does that help the MAC system, do you think?
Yeah, so the pack line defense kind of crowding the lane, making the defense live with contested jumpers. If you have the length to keep the ball out of the lane and make guys shoot over you, and you can contest. And obviously it's pack line, so it's not a lot of gambling. But with like you spoke to the length and the wingspan of some of these guys. I mean, we're able to rake a guy's balls, get deflections. I think we can get a ton of deflections, even though that's not necessarily a characteristic of the pack line. But it's just an extra advantage. We do a lot of switching, between likewise guys. It gives us the opportunity to diversify kind of, how we, what lineups we can play, because, we have guys, if we got David Johnson out there who's 6'5", he can switch on to a 6'8", a 6'9" forward, or a big man. So it definitely gives you an added advantage. And then obviously, the staple of Chris Mack is the rebounding, to dominate the glass offensively and defensively. So in those aspects, it's highly advantageous for us.
Absolutely. And do you think it's tough, like for you? I mean, you always had the fundamentals to know you got to box out, you've got to find your man, you've got to pin him down and then go get the ball. But do you think it's difficult for young guys who do have long arms, who have the length, they have the leaping ability, to remember the fundamentals to be able to go pursue the ball the way Mac wants them to?
Yeah, for sure. So, we like to be a very confrontational rebounding team. We like to make contact, check, drive the offensive players, back, and then, pursue the ball. But, similar to what you said, I was always a smaller guy, 6'1"-ish guard. And I understood the techniques. I understood, the low man wins. You got to, whether it's me and a 7-footer, if I can get into his legs and drive him back and make him come over my back, that's the key. Now, conversely, like you said, some of these freshmen that come in and they're 6'6" and they've just been able to sky above, these high school kids and just go get the rebound. It's a very tough transition. Also, it's not a lot of emphasis on offensive rebounding in high school basketball. That's something, we emphasize every day. So just even to have the mentality of this guy's going, I got to check him. I got to check and make sure he's, not sneaking me or anything. So it's certainly an adjustment, and I think that's why we are such a good rebounding team historically through Mac, because he emphasized it every day. I mean, in one drill or setting or another, rebounding is always the emphasis.
Yeah, it something that I don't think people really ultimately think about. I mean, I think they give the Big Ten its due credit for being a really good rebounding league. They always have a lot of big dudes in that league. But the ACC with like UNC, FSU, I mean, they've got some teams in the league that really can get after it on the glass, and they've got the length. And I mean, UNC always has these guys who are like 7 foot 260 who are pursuing the ball. So it really is valuable to teach that stuff for sure.
No, absolutely. And that's something that, you wouldn't think, all schools don't work on boxing out. The first college I went to, we didn't do box out drills or anything in practice because the coach said, he was worried we may get hurt. So, when I came here, that was a shock to me, a difference. I didn't know any different. But, every day it's rebounding, boxing out. That's the emphasis. And that's the only way, you can instill and make that one of your identities. But you're exactly right, man. Florida State, UNC, those guys just annihilate the boards.
Yeah.
All the length.
Yeah, your face says it all. Those teams are brutal. So I want to use your expertise as a guard, especially in the MAC system, to help, because everyone, I'm sure you hear it, and you whatever Twitter or media you might consume, you probably have come across this when talking about Louisville. The big conversation is David Johnson and Carlik Jones playing together, what kind of on and off switches do they have with each other? How do they work well or not work well potentially in the system? So I want, from your perspective, what have you seen from those two so far in terms of how they're trying to gel together in the system that you guys are coaching?
Yeah, well, they're learning, still learning, and one thing that Mac does is we compete every day in practice. So we pit them against each other a lot, which is good for them. Obviously, 2 point guards, you got to be competitive. They got to set the identity of the team. But at the same time, we got to work to make sure that they're developing, this synergy of learning how to play off of each other, because they're two guys that frankly, are used to having the ball. So it's been a learning process trying to get them to both, just figuring out each other's spots, how to make the other one successful, how to, co-lead this team, especially with Malik being out. We're dependent on them to not only make a lot of plays, but to hold guys accountable and to kind of quarterback the offense and the defense. So it's been, it's been a work in progress, and it'll get better as the season goes on, of course. But two really dynamic guards, different, very different, but two high-level guards. I like this backcourt over, anybody else in the country.
Is there, when I think about their games, and obviously I've only seen clips of Carlik, I haven't seen him play live, but it feels like David Johnson is exactly the type of guard who would play well off of a guy like Carlik Jones. Carlik being able to step out, he's improved his three-point shooting so much. It was actually interesting. I had him on here, and he was talking about how he moved his thumb on his release, and that made this one of several things that he did differently, but it helped his three-point shooting. But David, on the other hand, as you saw last year, teams countered him after he had his kind of introductory run of just incredible games, the Duke game. Teams started countering him. They knew to play under the screen because he wasn't shooting great. Just little things like that. But a guy who is so good at spacing the floor, finding people, playing off of a guy who's good at shooting and is such an electric three-level scorer, it does feel like they should, in theory, fit really well together based on their playing styles.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. It's not like, we're trying to, pit Kyrie Irving and James Harden against each other. These are two different players. David is an exceptional passer, with both hands. He's got left-handed hook passes, right-handed, pocket passes. And Carlik is too, but Carlik is more of a scorer. Like you said, he's dynamic. He's a three-level scorer. He's got a really good middle game. He's able to get to the rim, and he's going to draw a lot of attention. But, so is David. So trying to use that, like you said, David being able to get guys to go under the screen, maybe, rescreening, getting in the lane, spraying out, and Carlik being able to play off of that and score at all three levels. And Dave's going to have to score too. So I think they will work together fine. And I think Kyrie Irving and James Harden will work too, by the way. I just two different situations.
Yeah. Yeah, once you learn to play with people. I mean, the bottom line is, even if it doesn't work out the way that, in terms of winning a bunch of games or you get your stats or whatever, if you're a basketball player, you're going to share the floor with other people regardless. So you've got to figure out how to exist in some ecosystem or not. So from your experience of knowing David through the recruiting process and watching him, as obviously he's from Louisville, I'm sure you were paying attention to him a little bit when you knew he was coming into the program. Where have you seen the most growth in his game and his approach since what you may have seen when he was in high school to now?
I think he's really coming out of his shell, trying to become that leader. Dave is naturally pretty reserved kid, from my experiences with him. And like you said, I did know him in high school. I actually once he committed to us, I went to see him play 2 times actually. So he's come a long way. We're trying to get him to be that coach on the floor, going from Dave is really good at leading by example, playing the right way, sharing the ball, being selfless. But as a point guard, you got to be able to be vocal. That's probably one of the things Mac, really, really forced me to do was become this confrontational type of hold your teammates accountable leader, because it's better when it comes within. If you can get internal leadership and accountability, that makes the coach's job 10 times easier, because the players are going to respond to their teammates in a different manner than their coaches. So Dave is getting better with that, trying to get him to quarterback the offense, quarterback the defense, constantly talking, constantly leading, being confrontational with his teammates. He's growing. Still got a long way to go, but it's come a long way.
How do you is it just like the experience of knowing when that voice does need to come out, when you might pull them aside and say, hey, that's when you're supposed to be the guy who's shouting things? Like, how do you approach that as someone with so much familiarity with it?
Yeah, so I kind of just try to float during practice between him and Carlik, because Carlik's got to get better at that as well. But, just trying to observe, watching them with their teams. We do a lot of stuff, huddling, letting those guys talk to their teams and trying to flow, trying to hear, what's going on, then maybe pulling them aside afterwards, telling them, okay, tell this guy this, so that's how you go about that. Just trying to be, kind of like that mentor. I'm sure I get on Dave's nerves a little bit. I'm constantly telling him, he's not talking enough. But that's the hardest thing to understand, right? Like if you listen to, these big time point guards, Chris Paul, and, LeBron, like these guys are talking the entire game, nonstop, offense and defense, even when they're on the bench. So it's just, me constantly reminding them, staying on him, trying to show him and improve his leadership skills.
That's been one of the most fascinating aspects of this pandemic is in watching sports in the pandemic is with no fans or limited fans, you can actually hear how much the guys talk to each other. You can hear it in the bubble. You can hear it in like Premier League soccer games. You can just hear how much communication goes. And that's like free advertising for coaches across the world that you can then turn around and play this at like, this is the highest level. And this is how much these guys are talking on every possession, every like mini aspect of the possession. There's got to be this constant dialogue. So that's free for you guys to be able to use for the players.
And the bubble has been one of the best teaching points. And to your point, I remember one of the first games in the bubble, I think it was a preliminary game, the Thunder scrimmaged the Celtics, and afterwards Brad Stevens made the comment that Chris Paul dominated the game with his voice. And that was something I think I sent the clip to Dave and Carlik, just try to, send them little tidbits like that. But like you said, this has been the best teacher, for these guys. They're getting to see it, while we're during the summer and the preseason, they're getting to see these guys playing at night, and then we coming in, working on that stuff the next day.
Well, the last thing I'll ask you then, how's your suit game? Are you ready to be sitting on a bench all dressed up?
You know what, Jeff? My suit game is not the tightest. I got a few, but I definitely need to get more. And I was, trying to coordinate that. And then they came out with these regulations that we're actually going to wear, polos and khakis.
Oh, okay.
Polos. So I got another year, God willing. 2021 will be my year, but I'm definitely cognizant of it. I gotta definitely step my suit game up.
Hey, we all learn. I didn't know how to get a suit on until I was like 30, so you got plenty of time. I was actually thinking the other day, like watching you, and I know that Dwayne's been around and Ryan McMahon and those guys, like, enjoy this as much as you can, because the morning I woke up on my 30th birthday, my knees started hurting out of nowhere. And so just enjoy the opportunity that you get to bang around with these guys for as long as you can.
Man, I'm trying to stay young, man. I told James, the other grad transfer the other day, I said, man, these dudes, they talk so much cash. I'd hate to be one of these coaches who couldn't go out there and kill them, just to let them know. That's a big part of it, man. But you're right. Just trying to stay young, keep myself in shape, feeling good. I'm getting up there though, Jeff. I'm 25 now. I just turned 25 in September, so I'm not far.
Not far away. That's it never gets any easier. It just keeps getting worse and worse. So enjoy it while you can. All right. Well, Cece, thank you so much. I always love chatting with you. I know this has got to be exciting. I realize it's a weird year, but it's still a great opportunity for you to get your coaching wings and get going with this. I know you'll do a great job. So congrats on that and all your success and best of luck this season.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you having me on, Jeff.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Talk soon.